Hey guys, welcome back. So this is part two of the video about traditional versus self-publishing, and which path is best for you as an author. Um, definitely watch part one if you haven't watched it yet, or watch it after this video. But basically what I talked about, just to recap in part one, is what are some of the differences, what is traditional versus self-publishing, what are some of the pros and cons. Now I want to kind of give you some strategies for choosing which is the right path for you. And the first thing I want to point out is that you can do both, right? You can have self-published works out there, reaching an audience, and then you can simultaneously pursue or succeed in having a traditional path, publishing, an agent pick you up and bring you to a publishing house. So you can do both. And I encourage people to do both. And some projects are best suited for the self-publishing path, and some projects are best suited for the traditional path. So I'm going to save that for a separate video because that's a whole other can of worms. And we're not going to talk too much about how to choose one path, which specific path would be best for a specific project. Sorry, it seems like it got dark in here all of a sudden. Anyway, but you can do both, and I encourage you to do both, right? And here's a strategy that I like to employ. So you can try this, right? Let's say you have this aspiration. Let's say you've watched video one, you watch video two, you're still not sure which is the best path for a specific project you're working on, and you just finished or you're about to finish. You could try this approach, which is you query a project, meaning you send your query letter out and your pages and we'll talk about that whole process in a separate video in case you don't know what it's about yet. And let's say you get to the point where you finish your manuscript, you could send queries out to, let's say, 50 agents, maybe even 100. Honestly, there's not that many agents, unfortunately, who are actually responsive and looking for work right now. So let's just say 50. You query 50 agents with your latest and greatest masterpiece, right? And you can see if you get any traction. If you get traction, and by traction I mean one or two full manuscript requests, wow, well that's pretty interesting, right? Nowadays, for those of you who haven't tried doing this yet, getting a manuscript request in 2024 is a big deal, right? It's not easy to do. And I kind of joke around and say, like, man, if Tolkien was querying right now, I don't know if he'd get picked up by an agent. Because it's tough, right? And there's so many things going on, which we're going to talk about in the industry. So number one, the agents are kind of quitting in record numbers because they can't sell books to publishers. Publishers are having trouble selling books in bookstores. And I'm going to go into detail eventually about why I think that's happening. And it's a real problem, and the publishing industry really needs to wake up and get its act together, or it's not going to be an industry anymore. And Jeff Bezos is just going to, take over. So anyway, back to our point. You can query, see if you get any traction. Let's say you get one or two manuscript requests. That means you're onto something. Like, you've got a good concept, your writing is really good, you've made it to a point where you're on the verge, right? In that case, if you want to go down the traditional path, what I would recommend doing is send out, just keep polishing and see if you can get some more manuscript requests. Now, when I go into detail on the process for doing that, for sending out queries, I'm gonna suggest to you that you don't send out a blast of 50 queries all at once. There's going to be a strategy to it, right? And you maybe send out 5 to 10 and just wait for a few months and see if you get a manuscript request. If you don't, you probably want to change your query letter at least, if not the pages. And we'll go into detail on that. It's basically like using a data-driven approach to querying. And that'll probably be the title of the video, like a data-driven approach to querying. Anyway, we'll get to that in a separate video. But that's a strategy you can employ. You can send it out, you can do your querying and see if you have any traction. If you don't get any traction, depending on how much you want to go down the traditional path, let's say you really want to be traditionally published, well, don't give up yet, right? Until you've exhausted your entire list of querying agents. And in a separate video, I'll show you how to build that list. But once you've exhausted that list, then maybe you change paths and say, okay, this was not suited for whatever reason. Maybe it's because, I don't know, for whatever reason it wasn't suited for agents being interested in it. Then you take it down the self-published path, right? And that's not like giving up on the book. In fact, you can have more success down the self-published path once you know what you're doing, and that's part of what this channel is about, teaching you how to do. So subscribe now if you haven't already, by the way. And then you can have more success down that path than maybe the traditional path. So don't think of it as like giving up on your book. Think of it as it was not suited for that path. The agents were not biting on it for whatever reason, and you got to trust those agents. They know, like especially the ones that have been doing it for 20 years, they know what publishers are going to buy, right? And it might not be your book, but that doesn't mean there's not an audience for your book. If there's an audience for it, you could still have quite a bit of success with that book, okay? So that's strategy number one. Try the traditional path. If it doesn't work out, take it into self-publishing. And in the meantime, you're going to be watching these videos, presumably, and subscribe to the channel, so you're going to be learning more and more about the self-publishing path and how to succeed in it. And so it's not this negative thing anymore. And that's one of the things I want to encourage all of my subscribers to get in your head. Just because your book is not suited for self-publishing at the moment, because of whatever trends and whoever's in whatever positions, does not mean you cannot succeed. There are books on Amazon that are selling like as well as Harry Potter from no-name authors that, either got rejected or don't even never even tried the traditional path, right? It's a whole different beast. And you can succeed in one path without succeeding in both paths, or the other path without succeeding in the first path. So I want you to have an open mind about both paths and realizing that they're both equally good opportunities for success. Now, I think part of the stigma of self-publishing that authors have is because they want to see their book in the bright lights, right? It's kind of that fame thing, like Barnes & Noble, seeing my book on the shelf at Barnes & Noble is just like, there's so much prestige in that in the minds of authors, right? So let me tell you a story, okay? I've started a lot of companies. I've succeeded with a lot of companies. Watch video 1 to learn more about me and how I've done that. But I've sold products that have gotten into like all the prestige you could possibly imagine, right? The best websites, the best retail stores, and those products didn't make nearly as much money and didn't reach nearly as many people as some products that I've launched that never made it into any retail store, never, had the prestige of being on this book, this shelf or whatever, but was a huge success. Like reached more people than even those retail stores could have done for me, right? So I want you to open your mind and realize there are different channels and different paths available to you as an author. Okay, so I give you one strategy. Start with the traditional path of querying. If it doesn't succeed, take that book down the self-publishing path. Here's another strategy for deciding, right? Look at the types of books that are selling currently. Go into Barnes & Noble or look at like New York Times bestseller. Look at the types of books that are selling. Ask yourself honestly, is my book that type of book? Can I see this book being on that list? And be honest with yourself about it. If no, maybe it's not suited for that path. And you can save yourself like a year of querying. And just take it down the self-publishing path. And another way to do it is like try to find out, look at the reverse. See if there's an audience online. See if there's an audience on Amazon or an audience on YouTube land of types of people that you can imagine would be interested in that book. And we're going to go into YouTube land and we're going to go into digital marketing and how to select book ideas based off of what's trending in different areas and how you can reach an audience using social media. We'll do that in a separate video. But you know, look out there. Maybe you know somebody who has a YouTube channel who would be delighted to have you on, and they have a big following. And they'd be delighted to have you on based on the topic of your book and based on the topic of that channel, right? Maybe they'd be delighted to have you on. Maybe you could even reach out to them before you decide to go down traditional path or the other path and ask them, hey, I'm finishing up this book. Would you be interested in, talking about this book once it's released? Seeing if you get any traction. If so, maybe you don't need the traditional path and you can get a 35% royalty instead of a 5% royalty selling the same number of books. And so maybe you should go down that path. But I want you to think about it in terms of readership potential, and I want you to think about it in terms of your other goals as an author. Are you trying to sell books? Are you trying to sell more books, like tens of thousands of books, or would you be happy selling fewer books but making more money? Because it's a different analysis depending on your goals, right? If you sell a book via traditional publishing path and you're getting 5% royalty and you sell 1,000 books, right, at let's say $10, I got to pull up my calculator here so I'm not giving you guys fake numbers. Give me 1 second here. Let's say you sell 1,000 books. You can't control the price. It's probably going to be like $7.99 if you're going the traditional path, right? So total revenue is $7,990, and let's say you get a 5% commission. You made $399 from selling 1,000 books. Okay? Well, if you sell on Amazon and you sell 1,000 books, you can easily make $10,000. Did I even do that math right? That's crazy. I'll check my own math. Hold on a second. 1,000 books times $7.99. Yeah, $400. Okay, you can make at least 10 times that selling the same number of books on Amazon if you set your price and you're in the right niche and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, you're going to sell more books traditionally published, but are you going to make more money? Maybe not. It depends. It depends on a lot of factors. But again, my goal here is to show you some different strategies for thinking about this and trying to open your mind to the fact that they're both equally valid in 2024 in terms of paths to success. And that said, I'm already at the 14-minute mark, so that's probably enough for this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.